Ousmane Démbélé sees his former teacher homeless. What he does next is heartbreaking. A freezing winter afternoon in Vernon. The damp wind from the Seine crept through the narrow streets, carrying a subtle yet biting chill. The sun's golden rays barely pierced through the heavy clouds above the small train station. Dembélé had just parked his modest car. He took a deep breath. It had been years since he'd returned here. This was the neighborhood where it had all begun. Moments of hardship, but also raw tenderness and a sense of family amidst poverty. He wanted to see the neighbors of his youth again. But at the corner of a familiar street he froze. A frail figure sitting on a bench, shivering in the cold, caught his eye. White hair scattered by the wind, an oversized coat and a worn book in her hands. Dembélé recognized her instantly. His heart sank. "Madame Claire?" he whispered, stunned. His former English teacher, the one who had guided him when he was just a shy boy, quick with a ball but clumsy with words. In that school where dreams felt so far away, she had been a gentle light. A passionate woman, kind, with a sincere smile. She hadn't just taught him irregular verbs. She had taught him respect, hard work, and most of all, to believe in himself. "You may lack money but never dreams," she once told him on a cold winter evening, the radiator broken, their hands frozen on the desk. Those words stayed with him like a silent promise. At Dembélé's home, the end of the month was always tight. Meals were often frugal, the nights cold. But Claire brought small bags of food, old books, sometimes even a worn pair of sneakers. "You'll need these to run toward your future," she had said with a wink. That gesture never left him. But time is not always kind to the most beautiful souls. While Dembélé rose to football stardom, Madame Claire slowly fell. A widow, abandoned by a son drowning in debt, she sold their home. Then came the void. The street. The school had closed. The memories clung to that old English book she held to her chest. Sometimes she would still teach a few simple phrases to wandering children, just to feel like she still mattered in a world that seemed to have forgotten her. And there, Dembélé, now known worldwide, stood frozen before the woman who had given so much without ever asking for anything. He approached slowly. The sound of his steps stirred something in her. She looked up. "Ousmane, is that you?" Her voice was faint but filled with emotion. He knelt down and held her frozen hands. "Why are you here? Why didn't you tell me?" She gave a faint smile. "I didn't want to bother anyone. Just seeing you again is already a miracle." But for him that wasn't enough. "Madame Claire, come with me. Let me give back a little of what you once gave me." She tried to refuse, but he insisted. "You gave me a world, madame. I want this world to be yours too." He gently helped her up. Her fragile body trembled, but her eyes shone with a forgotten spark. "Still the same big-hearted little boy," she said. Dembélé gave her a discreet, emotional smile. They talked for a long time. She recalled his childhood mischief in class, his first passes in the courtyard. He remembered her encouragements, her secret cakes. "Every time I scored I thought of you, Madame Claire. It wasn't just a goal, it was your faith in me." He took her to a small restaurant. The warmth, the soft lighting, the fragrant soup. Claire hadn't experienced that in so long. "It's too much," she whispered. "It's only the beginning," Dembélé replied. Then he brought her to his training center, a place where children from all walks of life ran toward their dreams. "This is where stars are born," he said. "I want you to be their light." A room was already ready for her, with books, warm blankets, and a view of the fields. The next day he offered her a role. "They need to learn to dream bigger. And no one does that better than you." She hesitated, then accepted. "For you, Ousmane. And for them." The children adored her. She taught them words, songs, and the stories of young Dembélé. Gradually she found joy in life again. The center echoed with their laughter, her lessons, her stories by the fire. She became more than a teacher. A grandmother. A storyteller. A quiet legend. Each night, she looked out over the fields from her window, a book in her hands, her heart at peace. Dembélé often passed by silently, watching her share what he called real magic, believing in someone. One day he whispered, "You didn't just save me from failure. You gave me a future." Winter passed gently, and with it came the first leaves of spring, shy but full of promise. Madame Claire, more alert, more smiling, was finding herself again. In the courtyard of the center, she was often seen walking slowly among the fields, greeting the children, encouraging them with a kind word, a sincere smile. One day, as she was dictating a simple English lesson on the word hope, a boy raised his hand. "Madame Claire, what's your dream?" She paused. Then softly, "I think I'm living it." That evening, Ousmane knocked on her door, notebook in hand. "I have an idea," he said. "And I need you." She raised an eyebrow. "A book? A manual? Not like the usual ones. It would be a mix of English, football, and dreams. Yours, mine, theirs." She brought a trembling hand to her mouth, moved. Over the following weeks, they worked together in a small room. She wrote, he told stories. The children joined in too. They drew, colored, added simple words they wanted to remember. The book was called Dream Big, Kick Hard, an ode to learning and hope. On launch day at the center, each child received a copy. On the first page, written in gold letters, "To Madame Claire, who taught champions to dream, long before they knew how to score." The children gave her a standing ovation. Dembélé stood in the back, a quiet smile on his face. But it wasn't over. Ousmane had one last surprise. One evening, he brought Claire to the center's large hall. The lights dimmed. On the screen, videos played of former students, former colleagues, all speaking about her. "She taught me to believe in myself. Without her, I'd never have become a teacher. She gave me my first pair of sneakers." At the end of the video montage, Ousmane appeared on screen. "Madame Claire, this center already bears my name. But starting tomorrow, the library will bear yours. Because real power is in educating hearts." She burst into tears, unable to say a word. The children rushed over to surround her, like grandchildren around a beloved grandmother. She whispered simply, "Thank you for giving me a place in this world again." Dembélé's center had become more than a training ground. It was now a sanctuary of transmission, memory, and transformation. And at the heart of this sanctuary stood an old woman with white hair, holding a worn English book in her hands, still building futures every single day. Months passed. The center thrived. Children now spoke English proudly. Some even read full books aloud as if to show Madame Claire that she had not wasted her time. Every morning, she prepared a short lesson, always ending with a kind word, believe, kindness, together. But one day as she rose from bed, she felt an unusual pain in her chest. She said nothing. She didn't want to worry anyone. She continued teaching, slower, more fragile, but still present. Ousmane, however, noticed the paleness of her face, her longer silences, the sighs she let out more often. One evening, he entered her room and gently knelt beside her. "Madame Claire, please let me take you to the hospital. Just to be sure." She gave a tired smile. "If it's you taking me, then I'll go." The diagnosis came. Her heart, too tired. A long-standing murmur. Inoperable. The doctor spoke softly but clearly. "There's not much time. But what remains can be precious." Ousmane said nothing. He just sat there holding Claire's hand. And she, in a whisper, "This center, what you're doing, it's more than football. It's a heartbeat for the children the world too often forgets. Keep going even when I'm gone." In the days that followed, the entire center began to revolve around Claire. Children came in small groups to read her sentences, bring her drawings. One afternoon, she said gently, "Learn to say goodbye, but say it with a smile. Because a heart that has loved never truly dies." Ousmane organized one last celebration. Simple, sincere. In the courtyard, colorful fabric garlands, homemade cakes, songs in multiple languages. Madame Claire, seated under the old oak tree, watched with misty eyes. "This is the most beautiful moment of my life," she whispered. That night, she passed peacefully. A book in her hands, the children's scarf around her neck. In the morning, when Ousmane entered her room, he knew. He didn't cry immediately. He sat in silence. Then finally whispered, "Thank you for being the light we never deserved but received when we needed it most." A few days later, the main field of the center was renamed Claire Du Bois Stadium. and at the base of the old oak tree a plaque was placed. She taught children to speak to the world, but most of all to believe in themselves. Every year, on the same date, the children of the center organize a tournament in her name. No trophies. No rankings. Just one word printed on every jersey. Thank you, Claire. And on certain nights, when Ousmane looks up at the sky, he whispers, "You see, madam, they're still dreaming. Because of you." Time passed. 3 years already. The name Claire Dubois had become more than a plaque. It had become a symbol. A password among the children. When one of them doubted, another would say simply, "Remember Claire." In the center's main hall, a painting had been hung. A portrait of her, painted by a former student who had become an artist. Her eyes still shone with that same gentle spark. Below it, a quote embroidered by the children. "To teach is to plant stars in the dark." Ousmane had changed. Not in the way he moved, but in his heart. Since Claire's passing, he had built a second wing at the center, named the House of Hearts. A place to welcome abandoned children, lonely elderly women, and forgotten teachers. "Never again another Claire on the street," he said one day, his voice steady. Every room in that house was designed with care. Hand-sewn curtains. Cushions embroidered by the children. Bookshelves full of stories. And always a classroom. Because he understood. The real goal isn't in the net. It's in the minds we light up, the souls we lift. And at every inauguration, every victory, Ousmane never fails to look up to the sky and whisper, "That goal, it's for you, madam." One evening, returning from the center, he received a letter. The handwriting was old, shaky. It was from a former student of Madame Claire. She lived in South Africa, teaching in a shack in a township. She had seen a clip from the Thank You, Claire tournament online. She wrote, "She taught me how to read. Today I teach those no one sees." Ousmane read the letter in silence. Then placed it in a wooden box where he kept all of Claire's memories. A photo of her in class. Her old English manual. The multicolored scarf. And now this letter. Every morning before training he enters that room. He lights a small candle. Greets her memory. Then walks out, tall, steady, ready to inspire. Because he knows now. He is not alone. He is the link in a chain. One link among many. And somewhere, amid children's laughter, English mistakes, and rolling footballs, Claire still lives. One autumn morning, as leaves fell like soft memories onto the cobblestones of the center, a young boy named Malik knocked on Ousmane's office door. He held a crumpled letter in his hand. He was shaking. "Mr. Ousmane, I think I want to quit." Ousmane looked up. He recognized in the boy's eyes what he had once seen in the mirror. Doubt, weariness, the urge to run when dreams felt too far. He invited him in. They sat side by side. "You know," Ousmane said gently, "I almost left too when I was your age." Malik looked up, surprised. "But someone taught me that leaving isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's not the door you need to change, it's what you carry inside." Then he opened a drawer and took out the famous scarf, the one the children had given Claire. He placed it in Malik's hands. "When you doubt, hold it tight. It carries stories more powerful than a goal. Words of love. Silences full of light." Malik nodded, unable to speak. But his tears spoke for him. That night, Ousmane stood for a long time under the old oak tree where Claire used to sit. The wind made the branches sway like a silent prayer. He looked up at the stars. "I'm doing my best, madam. But sometimes, I'm afraid." And like a whisper, he thought he heard a gentle voice reply, "Fear doesn't stop you from teaching. It simply reminds you that you're alive." The years went by. The center grew. New students. New stories. But one tradition never changed. Every Friday evening after the last training session, all the children would gather in the common room. The lights were turned off. The fireplace lit. And one student would step onto the little stage, a book in hand. It wasn't a football book. It was Madame Claire's book. Dream Big, Kick Hard. They would read a chapter. Then they would share what it meant to them. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they cried. But always they felt stronger. And in a corner of the room, quiet and discreet, Ousmane Démbélé would listen. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Because he knew the mission lived on. Not on stadium fields. Not on television. But here. In every word learned. In every dream reignited. In every child who one day would dare to say, I want to become someone good. Just like her. Years had passed. The center had changed, grown, matured. Walls were repainted, new training grounds added, a modern library built. But inside, everything still honored Claire's spirit. Ousmane Démbélé too had aged. His cleats long put away, he now walked carefully with a slight cane. His hair was peppered with gray, his face marked by matches, sleepless nights, and countless memories. But his gaze was still that of the boy from Vernon, curious, loving, always turned toward others. He no longer taught, not officially, but he was there every morning, at the entrance of the center, greeting, listening, resting a hand on a child's shoulder before a game. Breathe, run, and most of all, have fun, he would say. One day, while he was watching the children train from a wooden bench under the oak tree, a young man entered the courtyard. He carried an old sports bag and something wrapped in his hands. Mr. Dembélé? Ousmane turned slowly. The boy stepped closer. He must have been around 22. My name is Idris. My father asked me to give you this. He held out an object wrapped in dark blue cloth. Ousmane carefully unwrapped it. Inside, a small frame. A photo. A memory. Claire. Young. In her classroom. Surrounded by children. And in the front, a very small Ousmane wearing shoes too big for him and eyes full of fire. My father's name was Malik, the young man said. He told me everything. He said you were a bridge. That you had received the light of an extraordinary woman, and passed it on. Now I want to receive it too. Ousmane closed his eyes for a moment. He felt his heart beat harder. Slowly he placed a hand on Idris's shoulder. Can you read? Yes. Then come with me. He led him into the common room. All the children were there, seated as they always were on Fridays. But this time, it was Ousmane who stepped onto the stage. He opened the old book, Dream Big, Kick Hard, and read aloud for the first time in years. His voice trembled, but it rang out like an ancient song. He read the chapter on courage. The one Claire had made him copy out long ago when he wanted to give up. When he closed the book, a heavy silence filled the room. Then a child raised their hand. Mr. Ousmane, will you leave one day too? A soft smile lit up Dembélé's tired face. Yes, maybe. But as long as you remember, I'll still be here. In your passes. In your corrected mistakes. In your broken English. In your wildest dreams. The next day, Idris was accepted into the center. Not as a player, but as a future English teacher. The circle was complete. But in truth, it was only just beginning.